even knowing what happened to him. It's 7 o'clock at night, and they didn't find out until the next morning. And so he's wondering, my brother went to the store, where did he go? And the father and the stepmother were gone. They had gone out to have, to hang out or whatever, and he has to live with that every day. When I returned from LA, I was on the train, and I saw somebody with Skittles, and it just like kind of blew my mind, because I hadn't seen, ever since this has happened, I don't generally see people eating a whole lot of Skittles, but I hadn't seen it, and it triggered this thought that went back to this kid, because he had that in his pocket in an Arizona iced tea. And he's dead now. And the reason why he is dead is because of the pervasiveness of racism and national oppression in U.S. society. And this person, George Zimmerman, whether he's white or Latino, saw black people as a criminal element. I don't care what anybody says. And I tell people all the time, don't read comments after news articles. And I do it, and I shouldn't do it, because people who post that shit are cowards. You have anonymity, and you can say the most racist garbage, and no one is going to kick your ass for it, because nobody knows where the hell you are. But I read those comments, and I'm like, I shouldn't, because I want to but this person, George Zimmerman, saw black people, and he went around asking people, saying, on the lookout for a specific person. And what I was going to say, the reality is, if Trayvon was white, we wouldn't be talking about it. He wouldn't have been killed. Simple as that. George Zimmerman would have seen a white person standing there underneath an awning and just looked the other goddamn way and went about his business looking for a young black guy walking around. That's what he was out in the hunt for. Racism. Pure unadulterated racism. And to him, and the thing is this place, this gated village, was majority people of color. But about 53% of the people in that gated village were people of color. So this young person who was just walking around had no right to be there in the eyes of George Zimmerman because he was black. And Trayvon was talking on his phone to his girlfriend, anticipating going back home and watching the rest of the All-Star game on television, and saw this person looking at him and feared, and talked to his girlfriend on the phone about it, asked what he should do. So I'm going to do this or that. And George Zimmerman chased him down. After being told not to do it, mumbling what was most likely fucking coons under his breath, and chased him down and proceeded to execute him. And they say he had the right to defend himself. Well, you should look up the statute. First of all, we should talk about the stand your ground law in a racist society such as this. But look at the actual statute. Look at the actual statute, and you will see that he was in violation of the actual statute. So their law that they say gives him the right to do what he did does not support actually what he did. It has to be reasonable. And a person who was over 6 feet tall and outweighed this kid by 90 pounds, is it reasonable to anticipate that this person could apply enough force to hurt George Zimmerman? By a regular everyday person who ain't a pig in racist U.S. society, you would look at the two of them standing together and you would say there's no way in hell that the law as it's written justifies what he did. Just using your goddamn common sense. This is probably the most I've ever cursed in a speech, and I apologize for that. Just using your common sense and using the law as it is written. But the cops, this ain't the first time that they've covered something up. And this was a cover-up. Because they corrected some of the witnesses, and they disregarded the 911 tape. They never took him in. Even a cop who shoots somebody is put on desk duty. And they have to go through supposedly, this is what's happened. Supposedly, because I doubt this shit is what happens really. Supposedly, a cop, when you shoot somebody, there's a process which you have to go through to find out whether or not it was justifiable. They did not even do that in the case of George Zimmerman. He didn't go to the police station. They put him in the back of the car, talked to him a little bit, and said, you should go to, I think they even took him to the goddamn hospital to get looked at. They didn't look at his background check. They took everything he said, word by word, and disregarded what the actual eyewitnesses said regarding what happened that night. And if he had a bloody nose, it's because the kid was afraid for his life because he's being followed by some big white guy. And doesn't he have a right to defend himself? Of course he does. Because he was the one who was being followed. He was the one who was being chased, not George Zimmerman. He was being chased. Trayvon, who went to the store to buy candy and a soda for his younger stepbrother and was being chased 90 yards away from his parents' home. And he cried out for help. Listen to the tape. You know the difference between a kid's voice and a grown man's voice? And the cops said, we don't know. Bullshit. You covered it up. And one of the cops, the first one on the scene, his name is Raimundo. He covered up a police lieutenant's son was videotaped beating a homeless black man, and this pig covered it up. And that is exactly what he did in this particular case. They covered it up. And they don't want to prosecute them. They don't want to prosecute George Zimmerman. Because it throws this whole law that they're defending and the right of a good, standing white person to shoot a black person down the street like a dog. I mean, look at Michael Vick, man. He served 23 months in prison for dogs, and it shows you the value of a black life in this society, a black teenager, that this person is allowed to walk around and to say it was justified and not have to face the threat of prison. And President Obama was so shook he wouldn't even comment about it. I think he had flashes of the Skip Gates incident. Because you remember what he said, he talked about racism and police and profiling of people of color. And the support amongst the white community, it just dropped, it tanked. His support for him just tanked overnight after he made that statement. And so he's probably thinking, shit, it's an election year, I need to be careful. And even the statement that he made today was it was heartfelt to one extent. If he had a son, he'd look like Trayvon Martin. That was heartfelt, but it wasn't really, it was covering both sides. You know, I can feel for them, but I don't want to make a judgment about that. Anybody in their right mind who's looking at the case can use your common sense to see that this person executed this young black kid who was begging and crying for his life and shot him down in the streets. Plain and simple. It don't need to be rationalized. His thought going into it, the hell with that, fuck that, and fuck him. He shot this young man down in the streets, plain and simple. And now he's walking free and being defended by people. And he's backed up by the racist state itself. They have done everything. I mean, they're trying to ease his pain, but they've done nothing to ease the pain of the family members and friends who've lost this young person, who had the whole world to look forward to, everything. It was just the beginning of his life. They've done nothing to ease the pain. And you know, one of the things that should be demanded, not only should we demand that Zimmerman be jailed, but in a town like Sanford that has 50,000 people, fire the whole goddamn police department.